Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Last week, a man named Kanhaiyalal Teli was brutally murdered in Udaipur by two men after he had allegedly posted a video of Nupur Sharma online. Nupur Sharma, of course, is the ex-BJP spokesperson who had recently made derogatory comments against the Prophet Muhammad. Now, since the killing, a number of important details have emerged about the case. For example, the National Investigation Agency has found that the killing was meticulously planned and instigated by a person in Pakistan who identifies himself as Salman Bhai. And this Salman Bhai told one of the two accused, Mohammad Ghaus, that he must do something spectacular in response to the remarks on the Prophet, since, according to him, peaceful protests will not yield any result. This is what the Indian Express learned through its sources, along with the fact that both Mohammad Ghaus and Riaz Mohammed, who is the other accused in the case, took part in protests last month in response to the Nupur Sharma controversy. But after this Udaipur murder, another case has come to light. One that actually happened a week before this one. In Maharashtra's Amravati district, a 54-year-old chemist named Umesh Pralhadrao Kohle was murdered, allegedly in retaliation for posting a video supporting Nupur Sharma. In this segment, Indian Express's Jayaprakash Naidu joins us on a call to talk more about the case. So Jayaprakash, tell us, what do we know about how and when this killing took place?
So this murder took place on the night of June 21. It took place in Amravati city, where this chemist named Umesh Kohle, aged 54 years, was on his way back home after shutting his medical shop. This was around 10:30-11. Umesh Kohle was accompanied by his son and his daughter-in-law. So when they were on their way home, his scooter was stopped by three bike-borne men, and one of them attacked Mr. Kohle on his neck with a knife. And before his son or his daughter-in-law could try and help him, these three had fled on the bike, and then they rushed him to a nearby hospital where he died during treatment.
And could you tell us how Kohle became a target of these people?
So in the investigation still now, the police have said on record that he has been killed because he was circulating a post saying that he supports Nupur Sharma on WhatsApp groups. So it is being said that one of the posts that he said on the WhatsApp group was received by a veterinary doctor. So this doctor was friend with Mr. Umesh Kohle. So he said to have forwarded the post of Mr. Kohle to another WhatsApp group which included the accused. That is how the Mr. Kohle became a target.
And Jayaprakash, who are these people who are accused in the case now?
So all the accused are residents of Amravati. There are a total of 7 of them. All of them come from a poor background. They all are based in one side of the city and they are all connected. So the main accused is identified as one Irfan Khan. He's 35 years of age. He's a school dropout. He's a welder by profession. For the past some years, he has started his own NGO called Rehbar Helpline. So as part of this Rehbar Helpline, he used to do some social activities. During pandemic, he was quite active. He had also supported the NRC protests that took place in Amravati back then. So this person was the main link. The other accused who are involved in the case, including the person who stabbed Mr. Kohle, were friends with Irfan and they volunteered for this NGO. So they should run ambulances, they should provide food packets and stuff during the pandemic. So this Irfan Khan guy, he lives in a place called Pathan Chowk. It's in Amravati city. It's a chawl. And this person, at least in his society, had a very good reputation. Even though he was a poor person, but he was known for his social activities. And people had a lot of respect for him because during the COVID, he and his NGO, along with others, had helped to complete the last rites of many bodies, like over 100 bodies. These are people who are living in slum, right? So they had a lot of respect for this person and they are all in utter shock that a guy like him could do something like this. So even though they condemned the incident, in the place where Irfan lives, it's a Muslim dominated area and almost everybody who live over there are Muslims. So even though they are in utter shock that Irfan could do something like this, they are of the clear opinion that it's wrong. They strongly condemn the incident and nobody should take law in their hands. But they still can't believe that Irfan did that.
Yeah, but now he is said to be the mastermind behind this killing. Do we know what exactly he did as the mastermind?
So he was the one who has assigned tasks to the other accused. Like he is the mastermind. He was the one who said that three of you all will be doing recce. The other three of you all will be on the bike. The ones who are doing the recce who will tell when does this guy leave. And accordingly, the others will chase and commit the murder. And he also provided logistical support.
And do these people, including Irfan Khan, have any previous criminal records?
So none of these accused have any criminal history. Maybe one or two petty cases, like Irfan has one petty case of assault several years ago. And once he was also detained because he had helped his friend who had eloped with a girl from another community. So at that time he was detained by the local Nagpuri Gate police station. But otherwise, Irfan is known to the Nagpuri Gate police station as a person who's into social issues and used to often come to the police stations with others who needed some kind of police help, try to help them out. So this way, even the Nagpuri Gate police station officials did not think that he is capable of doing something like this.
Okay, and when we look at this killing and the one that happened in Udaipur, what similarities do we see between them? Apart from the fact that both victims had allegedly shared the Nupur Sharma video.
I would say poverty, because in this case also all of them, they were poor and they did not have any criminal records. So I think what they have done is because of the whole religious extremism, if I may say that. That is the two things. One, the Sharma link, and the other one, that they are from poor background. And in this case, it is being investigated if they were radicalized, and if there are any further links. So as of now, the police said that, these are the only accused involved in the case. And we are finding out if, there was any, like there is a handler who told them what to do, like it is in the case of Udaipur. But as of now, it ends with Irfan.
And now we know that this case is sensitive and has taken place at a time when the government in Maharashtra is changing. What concerns do police have going forward?
So tomorrow there will be a Shok Sabha over here. It will be at the Raj Kamal Chowk. So the reason that I'm saying Raj Kamal Chowk is because it's the same place where riots had broken out last year in November. If you remember, there were protests in 3 parts of Maharashtra in November last year by the Muslim community to show their solidarity towards Muslims who were facing violence in Tripura. So when the Muslims had protested, just a day later, the BJP had kept a morcha. And during the morcha, a lot of violence took place. And the morcha was kept at the Raj Kamal Chowk. So now the people include Mr. Anil Bonde. Just recently he became a Rajya Sabha member. So Mr. Anil Bonde was arrested last year for the violence. So Mr. Anil Bonde has approached the police saying that they want to have a Shok Sabha for Mr. Kolhe at the Raj Kamal Chowk. And about 2,000 people are expected to attend the Shok Sabha. So presently the police have not given them permission. And they have told them that you will be allowed to have the Shok Sabha if you all do not give any speeches at all. So that is, they are just talking about it. And as of now, nothing has happened, but no permission has been given. But this is certainly going to happen. And 3 companies of the SRPF have come to Amravati as a preventive measure, and the bandobast has been beefed up.
And next we talk about Assam. For the past few months, the state has witnessed massive flooding that has led to destruction and affected the lives of millions in the region. Now, floods happen in Assam every year, almost like clockwork. But this time, 2 things have been different. One is that this time, floods happened even before the monsoons arrived. And the second thing is that after the monsoons arrived, certain areas saw unprecedented flooding. Like the town of Silchar, for example, which lies in the southern part of the state. Silchar is the second most populous town in Assam, and the flooding it saw this time is the kind that it has never seen before. And even though the flood hit the town 2 weeks ago, the water in many parts has still not gone away. Indian Express's Tora Agarwala, who recently went to Silchar, tells us what she saw. Tora, people in Silchar have said that this has been the worst flood they remember seeing. What was this flood like?
So the flood hit Silchar town on June 20th. I mean, taking into account its topography, because it lies adjacent to the Barak River and it's bowl-shaped. So the town has seen waterlogging or does see waterlogging frequently, like other parts of Assam, urban floods as they call it. But what happened on June 20th was a flood like no other, because it was literally as though the river had come inside the town. And in a matter of hours, the water levels increased from ankle length to knee length, and finally it went over cars, and in some cases it even crept up to the first floor of buildings. So every resident in the town has one story related to the flood, because there was not a single person in this town who wasn't affected by the waters. And as a result of this, it was so intense, and it was such a big flood that everything in the town came to a standstill. Because the water levels were so high, transformers went underwater, so electricity was cut off, networks snapped, there was a lack of drinking water. So it was just basically like everything came to a grinding halt because of this. I mean, if you see the pictures from there, like really apocalyptic levels of water.
Yeah, and now it has been 2 weeks since the flood hit the town, but we understand that in some parts water has still not receded. Now, you went to Silchar to report on it. What did the people there tell you?
So while the waters have receded in most parts of the town, there are certain pockets that continue to be submerged even now. So that means for 14 days straight, localities have had water, and the situation there is still pretty bad because many houses still don't have electricity. There is a problem of access to drinking water or even water for other purposes. So those localities continue to be affected even now. So I was in Silchar earlier this week, and I visited one such locality, and it's called Chenkuri Road, and that area has had water since June 19th. And when I went there, it's like you have to see it to believe it, because it seems like a floating town, because everything is happening literally on water.
Yeah, and even when you were there, you had to talk to people while being on a boat, right?
Yeah, so when I went to this particular locality, even I had to report on a boat and interview people who were either on a boat also, but or wading through water or in their balconies on a higher floor.
कुछ काम के लिए जा रहे हैं?
नहीं, काम के लिए जा रहे हैं, पानी वगैरह लाने जा रहे हैं, पानी नहीं है पीने का घर में।
तो उस दिन से हर दिन आप लोग ऐसे बाहर जा रहे हैं बोट के साथ?
एवरीडे सबसे ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम पानी का ही हो रहा है, और राशन वगैरह का जितना प्रॉब्लम है वो लोग हम लोग इधर उधर करके मैनेज कर ले रहे हैं, लेकिन सबसे ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम पानी का ही है, पीने का पानी, पीने का पानी। आने जाने में खर्चा बहुत ज़्यादा होता है।
कितना देते हो?
हम लोग परसों पानी लाए थे, 30 लीटर्स पानी लाने में 1100 रुपये खर्चा हुआ।
So that whole area is, as I said earlier, resembles a floating town, and people were joking over there that, oh, this is our Venice. But it was sad to see, because there was a sense of resignation among people, because it's been 2 weeks, and that's how, like, if someone had to go to the shop to buy something, they'd just come down, they'd walk to the water, go to another locality, buy whatever, then come wade through that water and go back home. In Assam, I've covered both rural floods and urban floods, and there is a stark difference in the water. When you report from rural areas, the flooding happens from, say, river water, okay, and it's a little bit, say, let's say a little cleaner than what you see in urban areas, because apart from the river water which is coming in, it's also water from drains, it's also water from all the garbage, the plastic. So it's really dirty water. And when I spoke to residents, they told me that earlier the water was, let's say, maybe light brown, but on the 30th day, I was there on the 9th day, the water by that time had turned grey and black, and it was sad to see that people had to walk across that to get basic things. We met one gentleman, retired school teacher, who was walking, and he had this plastic bag full of mobile phones, and he was carrying it at a height, because to go to another locality to charge the mobile phones, that was not just his mobile phones, but phones of his neighbors as well. So a lot of people would just, give one person in the neighborhood all their phones, and, he'd go and charge it elsewhere. Apart from that, there were other people who weren't walking, but they were on these wooden country boats, and they had to pay maybe a few hundred rupees to sort of go from one place to another. And the moment they would reach dry land, they would go buy whatever from the shop and then take a boat again and come back to their house.
And Tora, were the hospitals in the region affected during this time as well?
So yeah, luckily the main Silchar Medical College, that wasn't inundated, but the approach to it was inundated. So for many people, they couldn't go to the hospital. But then there's this Kachar Cancer Hospital and Research Center run by a society, and the approach to it was also flooded. And when I went there, it continued to be flooded. So what the authorities did over there was they fashioned a raft, and basically that was what people who needed any sort of treatment would use to get inside the hospital. And when we went there, we saw people going into the hospital and lugging machines they could take home. So I met this person whose grandfather had a stroke. So he had gone to the hospital. He had rented a suction machine and he was sort of lugging that back on the raft to take home to his grandfather. You know, because it's a cancer hospital and many patients require critical care and chemotherapy and things like that. And with treatments like chemotherapy, you can't really miss your date. So what the hospital did was they had a temporary OPD outside the hospital, basically, before the waters began. They basically held temporary OPD under the trees, and whatever treatment they could give patients, some treatment happened there as well. So obviously, I mean, when disaster like this strikes, you have to improvise, and a lot of people did that. I mean, they had no choice but to do that.
And Tora, during this time, how has the local administration and the state government responded to this crisis?
Of course, they tried their best to, do what they can. But the thing is, it was just a disaster which was so unprecedented. And, as I said earlier, waterlogging does happen, but to this scale is a little, is a little unheard of before. So the administration was caught by surprise as well. And initially, they didn't have enough boats. And then they started using country boats for rescue. But the currents were too strong, so the boats kept getting pushed away. So initially, the first 2 days, it was completely crazy. Then, of course, the government stepped in. Additional columns of the NDRF and all were called from Bhubaneswar, Dimapur, Guwahati. Additional help was sent. The cabinet minister has been camping there for the last few days and he's overseeing the relief operations. The chief minister himself has visited, I think, 3 times in a span of 10 days. So they are trying, but the thing is, the intensity of the flood was quite huge, and that's why they've not been able to reach each and every person, for sure. I mean, they also admit that.
Okay, now let's talk about the reason why this flooding happened. Now, earlier you mentioned the Barak River runs adjacent to Silchar. And for years, there has been this embankment, this wall-like structure that was built to stop the river from coming into town. But now in this particular part of town called Betukandi, this embankment was actually broken by the people who live in that area. Could you tell us why did they break this embankment in this Betukandi area?
So now this area in Betukandi near the embankment is also a wetland and it's called Mahisha Bil. Okay, it's a huge wetland, and around that wetland there are a lot of many people stay around in that area. So what happened was that these people who live here for more than 2 decades, they've faced this problem of chronic flooding, regardless of whether the Barak River overflows or not. These people who live around this wetland, even if there's a small spell of rain, then this whole area will flood. So locals say that they've been telling the government about this, been mostly met with indifference, and no one's done anything about it. And this time when the first wave of floods happened, the area obviously got flooded. And later, when the rain stopped and the level of the Barak River went down, it made no difference to their area because that wetland was still brimming with water. So what we hear is that locals basically took matters in their own hand and they cut a bit of that embankment so that water from the wetland goes back into that river. So it gave the locals around that area a bit of respite. And after they cut that embankment, obviously that was against the law. And this was in May. 22nd May this happened, and 23rd an FIR was also registered. And the locals also, apparently they say that they informed the government that, this kind of breach has happened over here. Please look into it. And again, the administration really did not do anything about it. So from 14 June onwards, when the rains began again, the Barak River level increased, and through this gap, which was earlier made to sort of help these people, the water came flowing back through this same gap, and this gap was obviously much bigger now. So many say this is the reason why, the floods became so bad. And even now the chief minister that day said that this is miscreants have done it and this is a man-made flood and that's why it's got so bad. Currently there's some CID investigation into it. Some people have been detained also. So basically the one reason is of course just that the rainfall has increased. But the breach, the cutting which happened, many say that seems to be the main reason.
And in the end, we talk about the Olympic gold medal winning javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra. In the past few weeks, Chopra has broken the national record twice. The first was in Finland, where he threw the javelin at 89.30 meters, and then just last week in Sweden, where he managed to set the mark at 89.94 meters.
Neeraj Chopra.
Now with this last throw, he came extremely close to the 90-meter mark that he has been aiming to hit for years. In this segment, we speak to Indian Express's Nihal Koshie about Neeraj Chopra, his prospects at the upcoming World Championships, and what it would mean for him to cross that 90-meter mark.
Yeah, the first thing is that people have been asking him this question repeatedly, like when will you reach 90 meters? But we should remember that in 2016, which is just 6 years ago, our national record was 82 meters. So somebody throwing 89.94 itself is a huge thing. And yeah, 90 meters is that barrier. I mean, if you cross 90 meters, you are in that small group of throwers who have thrown over 90 meters. He will cross 90 meters. I mean, the form he's in currently, like after returning to competition since the Olympics, in the past 1 month in June, he threw 89.30, his best throw in a competition at the Power Nurmi Games, his comeback competition. Then he threw 86.69 in the second competition and then 89.94. So it's just that after such a long break to come and throw 289 plus throws is a big deal because it shows he's in form and he's fit and he is peaking at the right time. So if he crosses 90 meters, great. And I'm quite sure he will. And the thing is that you don't have to throw 90 meters to win at a major event. I mean, since the start of the millennium, if you look at the World Championships and the Olympic Games, only 7 of the 48 medalists, that is gold, silver, bronze, when I say medalists, have thrown over 90 meters and won a medal.
Yeah, because even during the Olympics where he won the gold medal, he had only reached 87.58 meters. So why is it so hard to reach that 90-meter mark in this sport?
Now, javelin throw is a very technical sport. There's a lot of force on the body when you throw, and it's almost like you are running and then you're stopping and then you're throwing. So there's that weight transfer and that weight has to go into the javelin. The angle of the javelin has to be perfect. So even a little change in something technical that day, or it can be even if it's a slightly open stadium, you could have headwind, tailwind, anything can affect it. It's like any other sport, but javelin is highly technical. So it could happen like Neeraj Chopra threw 87.58 in the Olympics final and he won gold. Vetter, who was throwing, he had a 97-meter throw about almost just 9-10 months before the Olympics and so he had 7 90-meter plus throws in 2021. But at the Olympics, he just couldn't throw. Maybe the track was not to his liking. His body was a bit stiff. He just didn't get the angle right that day. The good thing about Neeraj Chopra is, unlike most other Indian athletes, when it matters, he performs. There's no up and down graph. We have seen over the years, so many athletes, they will peak just before a big event. They'll go there and flop. That has been the story of Indian athletics. Maybe there was a PT Usha, there was a Anju Bobby George who did consistently well. But we have seen this in the past. Our star athletes going there and just not performing.
Yeah, but like you said, this has not been the case with Chopra. And now we have the World Championships happening in 3 weeks. What do his prospects look like?
I think the form he's in, he should finish on the podium. And if you look at the top list this year, there's nobody who's really consistently throwing over 90 meters. There's Anderson Peters, who's the defending world champion, who had 93 meters at the start of the year, I think in May in Doha. And then like a Vetter in 2021 who was throwing 90 plus consistently. Vetter also has just thrown in one meet so far. I think it could be he's just taking it easy, or there are reports of him being injured. So we don't know. So I think Chopra will finish on the podium. He could even win a gold, which will be historic. And you have to go back to, I think, a decade to find an athlete who's won gold at the Olympics and followed it up with gold at the World Championships. And the fact that he's been able to throw so consistently well is also a psychological thing for his opponents, because they know that he is throwing 88, 89. And Chopra, we have seen at competitions, he comes out and throws big initially. In the first 2-3 throws, he lays down the mark, he comes and has a big throw, and then the others sort of have not been able to respond. But it'll be interesting if if two athletes, 2 throwers suddenly come up with 92, 93. It can happen, you know. Someone can throw 93, 94. There are a lot of experienced throwers. And then we'll have to see how Chopra responds. But he has it in him to win a medal at the World Championships.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.